Paul Curnow from Baker and McKenzie joins me. Now, Paul, Baker and McKenzie have produced a report commissioned by the Clean Energy Council that looks at the implications of reducing the renewable energy target. What did the report find?
Well, we modelled a number of the scenarios that came out of the Warburton review, which looked at in particular what the impact would be of reducing the RET to a real 20%, which would be about 27 terawatt hours. And what we found is that creates a number of sovereign risks. Most importantly, it leads to a lower renewable energy certificate price. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on equity because when these projects were entered into, it was based on a much higher REC price. That in turn leads to pressure on banks as lenders to these projects. A lot of the facility agreements entered into have a review event, and that will be triggered with a change of law. So that often can then lead to a debt resizing, and in turn, I guess, in a worst case scenario, to an enforcement against those sponsors.
And what would the government need to do if it does reduce the RET?
Well, certainly, in our view, you would need to provide some compensation to factor in for that lower cost, that lower REC price. And the complexity for the government is that means taking into account all the individual costs for each individual project. If you're going to have true compensation to deal with that change of law and the sovereign risk that's being created, then you're going to have to look at those costs on an individual basis. And that implies a lot of administrative complexity, a lot of work that has to go into putting that compensation regime in place.
Paul, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.